a glass up high. Turn it up, it's time. Tall boy on the line. Everything will last. Raise your...
Welcome back to episode 277 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, once more, it's heading in a direction that we're very fond of on Tall Boy Radio. It's headed to possibly another dimension. As we welcome Tabitha to the podcast, would you like to say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Tabitha. I've been in the paranormal field for 20 years, and I have been seeing spirits since I was 7, not by choice, just by, I guess, the grace of God. I don't know. So
That's, first of all, I've got to say that's very interesting. That a lot of the people that we get on the podcast to talk about this sort of thing, we've had quite a few over the years. It seems to me that they're not going searching for these things, but have a natural innate gift to see them themselves. Now, many people believe that everybody has that ability to do so, but some people are a little bit more in touch and more willing to believe. Do you believe that is the case?
I do. And I also believe that it also has to deal with how it's handled when you're growing up. Like my mom never told me it was wrong. She just told me it was something that we had and it was a gift. And that's what I've told my daughter. And it wasn't something that was taboo in our household. So we would just be like, hey, did you see that? Or did you hear that? And we all would be like, yes. Or, and then, but yeah, I believe everybody can see. It just depends on if it was kind of squashed or if it was fed, they help, my mom just really helped it grow.
That's cool. That's great. Was your mum able to, had she seen some things as well?
We never ever really talk about it until we moved into a new house when I was 7, back in the early 80s. And that's when she can first remember seeing a spirit. And she was, in her late 20s, maybe early 30s. And then I was 6, 7 years old. And that's when the whole family started seeing something. So I think it's generational. My daughter can see things. I never have told her anything like, hey, this is correct, this is incorrect. You're not seeing what you think you see. She'll describe family members she's never met. She'll be like, hey, Mom, did you make this noise? Did you growl at me? And I'm like, no, I didn't growl at you, So I just let her go with it. So I think it's a generational thing.
Wow. That's cool. That's fascinating. Something I wish I could do. I've seen the odd thing, maybe something that spooked me out. I couldn't honestly say that I've seen anything that would convince a skeptic. It'd be fair to say. I know my wife is a little bit more in tune than me. I've shared a few stories on the podcast in the past where similar sort of thing where we used to live in a very old house and she used to complain that she couldn't get to sleep at night because of all the voices that she could hear talking. There was one lady living next door and we couldn't hear her. So it wasn't anything else that could be explained away. Then the house that we're living in now that we moved to is a new build property. Nobody's ever lived here other than us. And the first night that we stayed here, once we moved in, she said, wow, that's the best night's sleep I've ever had. I didn't hear any of the people speaking last night. Okay, that's a bit weird. There's a few other things you said that spooked me out as well. So a lot of the stuff that you look at then. So do you am I right in saying you work in the hospital field or do you just investigate areas like that?
I have into 2020. During 2020, the funny thing is I worked in the medical field and got laid off during the pandemic. I'm like, I must have been the only person in the medical field. So then I switched over to HVAC, working in heat and air during that time because they were essential also. So that's what I do now. But I worked in the medical field for 20 years and had a lot of experience in that field.
Yeah. So, during that time then, did you see things in the places that you worked in then, or did you actively seek them out?
No. When I first started working in dialysis, I did not seek anything out. I am one of those people that if I don't see anything for a year, I'm good with it. I don't call it into me or anything. I'm okay. So I can remember walking into the dialysis clinic one time. I was by myself. It was 3 a.m. in the morning. And all of a sudden we I was like I said, I was by myself, and I was getting the machines ready, and I looked up, and there was a man standing across the room. And I can tell you to this day what he looked like, what he was wearing, the hairs on his face, everything. And I asked one of my coworkers when she came in, I said, "Do you know this person?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh," she goes, "Where was he standing?" And I explained what he was wearing. She goes, "Yeah, he passed away a week before you started working here." And I was like, "Well, he's still here visiting." you know, so
Yeah. So I mean, that we, I mean, if you've seen these things before, I guess you're probably going to be less scared than maybe if I would, who is rather famously a coward. But did you? Were you scared? Were you intimidated? Did you? No. Wow. Do you
not
ever?
then, but I'm going to tell you, I am a coward. Like I'm one of the people that I go through, like I don't go down long hallways by myself. I'm like, something's gonna jump out at me. Like once they realize you can see them, they're like, "Hey, what you doing?" And I'm like, "No, thank you." Like I will go down a hallway with somebody, but if it's got like 10 rooms on each side, I do not walk down a hotel hallway by myself or anything. I'm a coward.
Listen, listen. It's what keeps us safe. I can promise you that. Well, I mean, I guess that
Right.
makes sense though. So if you were, I mean, if you were from say the other side, then I guess if you were aware that somebody could see you when most people can't, I guess you would sort of seek them out. That makes sense to me. Do you
hmm
have you ever tried seances and Ouija boards or anything like that, or have you always avoided those things?
I have not, just because I haven't been around people who have used them. I'm not, as long as the person who is hosting it knows what they're doing, I'm not going to say no. Or I may sit back and watch because there's certain things I was raised with being in the church that was taboo. Well, seeing spirits is taboo too, but so some things I'm just kind of like, I'm not sure until I get to see it a couple of times. So I haven't really been around people who have used them, but I'm like, if you can use them, go for it.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I'll always be careful dabbling with those things. Would be my first piece of advice to you then. So taking you back to then when you were younger, that first experience. Can you remember it quite vividly?
The first experience I have to tell people this, my mom and dad had, is that you could see like in the living room, you could see through the whole house, like the it was an open concept back in the day, so that the weather, it was like built in the 50s, so the weather, the if you didn't have air conditioner, the air would still flow. So my dad, we were upstairs asleep, and my dad would be like, "Hey Tabitha, you need to go to bed." And my mom's like, "She's asleep." And he's like, "No, she's not. She's playing in the dining room." And my mom's like, "No, she's not." And so this went on for like 20 minutes. My mom's like, "Listen, Richard, she's not asleep. I mean, she's asleep upstairs." And so finally, my dad's like, "No, there's a little girl." And I got grounded, and because I wasn't in bed. So finally, my mom saw a little girl peep around the side, and she's like, "Richard, that ain't, that's not Tabitha. That's a ghost." She's like, and so I always tell people, one, when I was little, I was really pale. My dad thought I was a ghost. And after that, like after she met my parents, that's when she would start showing up to us. Like she was like, "Okay, y'all are cool." And she would come into the bedrooms. Like if we were going to go down to the bathroom, we'd have to come down the steps to go to the bathroom. We'd turn the corner and she would be there. So our first paranormal experience was a small girl, and she was the same age as me, and she had passed away on that property. And but yeah, the first time I saw her, I was terrified. Like, because I was, like I said, I was just 7. And my sister and I had to go to the bathroom. So we came down the steps and we turned the corner, and there she was. And she was standing between us and the bathroom. And I was like, I don't have to go to the bathroom anymore. My sister's like, I don't either. So I like hopped on her back and she took me back upstairs. So
Man, that would spook me out. So could your did your dad have the same experiences as well?
my dad and my dad passed away a couple years ago, but up until he passed, and my sister, they never talk about it. They'll say they never saw anything, and I'm like, man, we were together half the time we saw stuff. So they went more of the it never happened, and my mom and I are kind of like, yeah, it happened. I don't care. So they were able to see it. They just chose not to speak about it.
That's interesting. I wondered at first whether it would be just like a maternal thing, whether it's just your mum, your daughter, and you know, down the sort of female side of the family could see things, but obviously your dad could and chose not to, and your sister as well, which is an interesting approach, one that I
Mhm.
can't say I wholly blame them. So in terms of the ghosts and things like that, just from your experience, how common is it then that so with this little girl, she had passed away on the property, you know, spirits when they're tied to a place or they're tied to a thing, does it seem to be that they had a bad experience there, or is it always the case that they'd passed away there? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I've seen spirits that have. I went to one Civil War battlefield one time, and I went to another like the next day, and the two battles were connected, but they were in different states. We had the same soldiers show up at each battlefield because they actually fought at each battlefield. So I'm not, and I don't know if they lived or if they passed away during the Civil War or what. So I don't, she passed, but she didn't pass away with something horrendous. It was just like, she just passed away in her sleep. So it wasn't like she had had, like I said, a horrendous death. But I think they can come and go as they please sometimes. So um, I don't know. I just don't know how they work. If I could sit down with a spirit and talk to them, I would love it and be like, why are you here? Where are you going? And why did you pick here? Because I didn't have a good childhood growing up. Why you want to share my childhood?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, you know, it's maybe if they weren't a little girl, maybe they passed away late into their 80s or something like that, which would be fabulous for us all. But then decided,
Mhm.
you know, when they visited, they were tied to a place when they were little. Because I tell you, if I'm going to come back as a ghost, I want to come back as a younger me, not one that I am with dodgy knees right now. You know,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
It'd be the younger me that came back. So with
Mhm.
those experiences and the other experiences we have, and we'll get to those in a second. I'm just curious because you mentioned there that you know you're a Christian, and does,
Mhm.
does it help to form your opinion of the afterlife and what that might look like?
For me, when I am more spiritual, I have more experiences. I'm like, I'll be like, well, I haven't had experience in a while, and I'll be like, I hadn't read my Bible, all right, I haven't done this. So I do, for me, think the closer I am in my walk, the better it is for me to see spirits. I have had a lot of Christians who have um I have a lot of Christian trauma, church trauma. So from people who know I see somebody or something, but you know, and then they are like they turn against me. But I've had a lot of church members where I've pulled to the side and been like, "Hey, I have to tell you something. You never have to talk to me again." And they'll be like, "Okay," and I'll give them the message in private. And then they're like, "Oh wow, thank you. I really needed to hear that. You know, I was worried about my mom, but she came through." And so it has helped some people it hasn't. And I feel like the closer I am in Christianity, the more I see.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, I'll be well. So when you say when you have a message, does that happen often where someone will come through and wants to speak to you, wants to pass something on?
Not very often. I've had a few. I'm not one of those people I'm like, I can see your grandmother on the left side of your body and things like that. I don't do that. So if somebody has come through and been like, I need you to tell them something, I will, but I'm not one that just carries messages around to people. I don't get it that way.
Cool. I just wondered because my grandfather
And
spent some time.
I'm okay with that.
No, I bet, yeah. I was yesterday. My grandfather was. He spent some time in Memphis, Tennessee, before the Second World War. So I'll just be curious if he pops by to
Mhm.
say hello. I'm sure he'll have some choice words or something to share with us, no doubt.
Right.
So yeah. So can you tell us about some of the other experiences then that you've had?
One of my favorite experiences to tell people, I was working in dialysis and I had gone to the back and we had a water tank because we had to have pure, you know, the water couldn't have anything in it. We had to test it, you know, like every couple of hours. So I was back there testing the water system and it had like 4 or 5 big tanks and everything like that. Well, I turned around and between me and the door, there was this huge mass. It was black and it came straight toward me. My coworker came to me a few my dog's walking around outside. I was trying to figure out what he's doing. But my coworker came looking for me probably about 5 minutes later, and I was knocked out. I was laid out. It came straight toward me, went through me, and that was the worst feeling. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought at that moment when I hit the ground, I was dying. And when she found me, I was out for like 10 minutes. Afterwards, she's like, "Oh, I thought we were going to lose you." And they were talking about calling the ambulance. And I got up and I still went to work because my patients needed me. But that was, I think, one of my most favorite experiences after the fact. During the time, it was horrible. But now looking back, I'm like, not many people have that experience.
No, I don't
But
imagine they do.
right. I work for a chiropractor. We've had books fly across the room. I had one come across the room and hit me in the back of the head. And my other coworker saw it too. We would have patients come in and I'll be like, "Go to room 3." And they'll say, "Well, we can't because there's a man in room 3." And we were like, "No, there's not." We'd all go in there and look, and there was nobody in there. So we had one. I was working the front desk and I kept hearing a magazine flip. And I was like, "What is that noise?" And so I looked up and there was a older woman sitting out there in the waiting room, and she was just flipping a magazine, reading it. And then she would turn the page. And I was like, I don't remember her walking in. So I checked the sign-in sheet. And when I looked back up, she was gone. I was like, that's not the place I would want to stay. But at that job, if I got upset, the spirit would get upset. Like it was almost feeding off my energy. So if the doctor would be ugly to me that day, like something would fly toward him, and he's like, "What happened?" I'd be like, "I don't know. You're on your own. Figure it out." But I've just really, I've had so many experiences that I know half the time people don't believe me.
So you do get a bit of skepticism then, do you? How do you handle that?
I can't make anybody believe. When someone tells me they see something, I'm like, I kind of am skeptical about it because it didn't happen to me. So I feel like if you don't have that experience until you do, nothing is going to make you be like, I can tell you every story I've ever had, but not unless it, like I said, it happens to you and you experience firsthand. I really don't care what you think to because you can't understand what I'm going through, and I don't know how to put it any nicer, or
No,
you're just not going to believe till it happens.
no, and this is the thing. So when we spoke at the start, and I said, so Gaz, so for regular listeners to the podcast, now that Gaz is pretty much always on the podcast with me, God bless him, but he's got work commitments tonight that he can't be here, unfortunately. The other two guys, Andy and Dave, are skeptics. Is the way to describe them. God bless them. But interestingly enough, so both myself and Gaz have had an experience of that. So Gaz has physically seen something. His mother passed away years and years and years ago, and not long after he saw her at the bottom of his bed. And now he doesn't believe for 1 second this is a dream. He was utterly convinced that she was there. I've known the guy for many, many years, and I can tell you when he's telling a fib, or when he's saying something that he utterly believes, and he utterly believes that it was mum that was stood at the end of the bed that day. And who am I to dispute that? I have to say that, the odd experience that I've had in my life are considerably less profound than that. So years and years and years ago, I used to work in a restaurant part-time. So I did a bit of kitchen portering just, when I was in my teenage years, just to make a couple of quid to buy the occasional beer here or there. And I was there. I was often the last one in the kitchen of the restaurant late at night. There were stories about this place being haunted. It's a place called the Manor House at Allsage. There's a couple of ghosts that have been seen there. And I was stood in the kitchen one night, and obviously, the restaurant doors, they push one way or another. And I heard the door go,
Mhm.
and I could hear it bobbling behind me. And I turned around, presuming it's going to be the night porter, to say hello to him. Bang, there's nobody there. So they're thinking, right, this is about 1:30 in the morning. I'm the only one in the kitchen. I'm like, well, I'm not so sure this kitchen is going to get too clean. I'm going to quickly go brush up and get myself out of it. So I went to get the brush pan, which was leaning on the wall against the banister. So behind the banister, it physically couldn't move. It was leaning at that angle. As I reached for it, it tipped forward and fell onto the floor. I was like, oh, hell no, I am out of here. I am not staying here. because I physically saw it fall in front of me. I know damn well I didn't touch it, and I was like, man, that's it. I'm out of it. I'm out of it. It was too weird for me.
Right.
How do yeah.
Well,
So
we had an investigator. Mhm.
no, sorry, that was me. I interrupted you. What did you say?
Oh,
Sorry.
oh no, you're fine. I was going to say we had an investigator that was a skeptic, and we were on a case, and it was me and my friend Vernon and this other lady, and saw a figure, a face, come like just appear at the door. Now the other lady was Vernon and I, and we're all three looking at it. And Vernon looked at me and he said, "Did you see that?" I said, "Yeah." "Did you see it?" And the girl between us was like, "See what?" And I'm like, "Well, if you're going to be a skeptic, you still have to have a little belief, or you're not going to see nothing." You know, she never had an experience. Even if everybody had an experience around her, she would never have one.
Wow, that's
And
weird.
I just thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that's bizarre. We've had a couple of paranormal investigators on the podcast in the past, and the one thing that is the most curious that they all have in common is they are absolutely hell bound. Not wrong, hell bent. Probably that's a bad choice of words, wasn't it? Hell bent on proving or disproving what they see. They're not going to just take it at what their word is, at what their eyes are telling them. They want to discount every other possibility so that know that what they have seen is what they've seen, and there's no other explanation for it. And I find that curious that if somebody's trying to prove something, they're constantly trying to disprove their own evidence. Yeah. So
Right.
in terms,
You know, and I
yeah,
check things out. If something's happened, I'm like, okay, let's look around to see what can make that noise.
mm, apologies. I think we've got a slight lag on the podcast. We are coming from a small place in Cheshire
Mhm.
to Tennessee, but we'll make do with it. Don't you worry, it's not a problem. So in terms of that, then, so you said like in terms of investigations, how many investigations have you been on, and how have you done?
Mm, I don't even know, over 20 years. I did take some time off when I had my daughter. So there was about 4 years I didn't investigate, but I would go 2 times a month up until I had my daughter. And that was so I started in 2006. So in 2012, I had her. So 2 to 3 times a month I'd investigate. Now I do about once a month and take Christmas off. So I've been on a lot of investigations.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong. And what?
Now I'm kind of switched over to, yeah. No, mhm.
Oh, sorry. I'll try not to interrupt. I was just curious to what those investigations look like.
No, you're fine. Like when I'm with a group or when I'm by myself hanging out doing investigations with somebody, like the professional side, it's, when we're going to a case or an investigation, if it's a private one, we can have more fun and enjoy ourselves. But I'm sorry, we have broke up. What was the question again?
I was just curious to know what an investigation looked like, whether it is with a group or what you do by yourself. What kind of equipment you might use, and the time scales and times of places you visit.
Yeah. Some of my favorite places I visited is Octagon Hall. That's in Kentucky. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital and Harriman Hospital in East Tennessee, Brushy Mountain. Those places are wonderful. They're almost guaranteed to get something. So those are like my go-to places. I'm going to a new place in West Virginia soon, and I've been a lot of places. If I'm with a client, my demeanor is completely different. I'll go in and make sure by the end of the night that they understand a little bit of what's going on. I feel like one of my first cases I went on, it was a Christian family, and the church was very against them having this stuff happen to them. So I was able to talk to them and give them kind of like, hey, this is the same thing I've been through. You're not alone. And, so I tried to help them understand what's going on. When it's just right now, I just do like the locations. I don't do any private homes right now. I just do the locations we go to and we can pay to go to. Because I've done so much helping other people that right now I just want to go have some fun, do it. My favorite piece of equipment is the gateway. It's like a spirit box, but it doesn't have that in it. You know, it doesn't have that static sound. It just comes through clearly. So that's my favorite thing to pull out of an investigation right now. I've only had it about a month or so, investigations or 3, and it has been spot on every time I've used it. So those are my favorite. The cat balls. I don't know why the spirits love the cat balls so well. I use those. I'm not very, I don't buy a lot of expensive equipment. I'm poor. Don't have the money like you see other people with this stuff and they're coming from head to toe. I'm like, I just use the basic, simple things. I'm kind of old school and I'm like audio recorder, camera, and whatever else anybody else wants to buy, you go right ahead. And like my boyfriend has like 3 cases sitting in the bedroom right now. There's one of them over here. And he has all kinds of equipment because he does the Bigfoot hunting and he does ghost hunting. And I get so upset at him because he's just now getting into the paranormal. And our last trip to Octagon Hall, he got 3 great catches on camera. And I'm like, that took me years. You just walked in and got it. I was like, so yeah, the gateway and I like just like the K2 meters, things like that. I'm just very basic on my equipment.
No, that's fine. It sounds to me like you're a bit of a conduit yourself anyway. So the things that, just taking yourself along is just going to help on those investigations. So one of the things you said there then is that you've done private investigations. Can you tell, I mean, obviously don't give away any names, but can you tell us about any of those?
Yeah, we had one that was really interesting. The case was his family. Every time we're next to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is a military town. So every time her husband would leave to go to like Afghanistan or in a training, that's when everything in the house would happen. So that was the lady that I went to, and I was able to tell them my experience because their church told them that what was happening was evil and things like that. And I'm like, let's pull back on that and let's not, but a lot of the stuff happened at night and they were all sleeping in the same room. The whole family was when the dad would leave. So me and this other girl that was on the group, I was like, let's hop into bed and let's see what happens. You know what I mean? Because if this is where the action happens, this is where we're going. So her and I crawled into the bed and we looked over and we joked and we were like, oh, look, there's holy water beside the bed. Never should have joked about that. That was the worst experience I think I have ever had in my whole life. Like everything happened. You could hear drums beating. You could hear she had a handprint on her back when she left, when she got out of the bed. We had you could see something on the ceiling just circling around trying to come down. And I was like, no, this is not normal. And it turned out the property was you could leave like 3 recorders out and you could hear the spirits on one recorder being like, when we left for the night and we locked up and we turned the alarm on because we were going to go out to eat. So we kept the recorders rolling. You could hear one of them go in one recorder. Well, where'd they go? And another spirit answered back, well, they are, they'll be back. And they were like, well, do you think when they come back, it'll get cooler in the house because I'm kind of warm? And I'm like, it was having a full conversation and it was going through each, like you could hear them walking through the house. Like if we had 3 recorders set up in different locations, we were catching it on every recorder, but you could hear it get quieter, lower in one recorder and get louder in another. Like they were just walking through the house. Well, it turns out it's a touchy subject. In our area, we have a lot of farms and we have a lot of slave history in our area. So their house, when they went outside and they were working in the yard, they found out that they had built the house, the subdivision, on top of the slave house, one of the slave quarters. And they had pottery and they had other things. So we truly think that some of the stuff was going on was residual, but we think some of the slaves were still there talking, um, and still having conversations. And they were very active. Like they knew what was going on. Like the slaves knew there was air conditioning. They knew certain things. And I was like, that's a little spooky.
Yeah, that is spooky because I don't know, I have no idea. Maybe you can tell us what you think a ghost is. Maybe being a spiritual person, you believe it is a spirit, or so. Some people believe it's like an electronical residue left behind of the person.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I know there's like the residual, the stuff that happens like at this certain time every night or every time the person got injured or, and they passed. I know there's that. I do feel like there's spirits that do walk around and they do have conversations and they do know what's going on because I had a reading by a pretty famous medium here in United States. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Cindy Kaza. She's worked with a couple other people, like big TV shows over here.
Yeah.
But she did a reading and some of the stuff that came through, they never would have known what was going on now if they weren't alert and seeing everything. I had saw a friend of mine from my childhood, her mother, my friend took her life when I was 13 and she was like 17. And I walked up to her mom. I was like, hey, I'm Tabitha. We used to live next door. I was friends with your daughter. And she's like, yeah. So we were all talking. And I went to go see Cindy like the next day. And she came through and said, can you give a message to my mom? And it was like she had set up the meeting so she could get her message. And so I did. I knew where her mom was. I had her number after that night. So I called her mom and told her. So one of my cousins came through during a reading and told me to tell her mom that she enjoyed watching TV when she would watch the game shows. And her mom's like, I don't watch game shows. And I was like, well, she said, she enjoys watching the game shows with you, like The Price is Right. And she goes, oh my Lord. She goes, I only watch The Price is Right when I babysit one of the little kids that she watches. So, and that happened now, like in this time. It didn't happen when she was alive. So they're still here. They're still watching. So I believe there's intelligence. Some of them are very intelligent.
Yeah, I mean that does suggest it, doesn't it? They're very aware. They're very aware of what's going on around them now. Probably very aware of what's happened in the past. Do you think that they are aware that they've passed on to the other side? Do you think all of them are aware?
I don't think all of them are. I think some of them are still living their life like they would, when they were living. I think some of them may have passed so quickly that they just don't know anything had happened. They may not have the understanding of what's going on. Like, they're just still living their little life. But I think most of them do know they passed on, or they have like something they need to say to somebody, or they just don't want to move on. I guess depends on what you believe in. If you believe in heaven and hell, I sure wouldn't want to go to hell very quickly. I would be hanging out as long as I could.
Very true. Yeah, very true. So those ghosts that you had on that you were recording, and you got to hear them moving around and they're having a discussion. Something you said there that really sort of piqued my interest is they commented that that it was cooler when you were there. Now, one of the things that most people commonly experience when they experience a ghost or something of the paranormal is they speak about the rooms getting very, very cold. Did you experience that? And do you think that is something that could happen to them as well?
Yes, I think so. Because we have energy. So if we can feel their energy and we get cold, I'm pretty sure they can feel ours and they may get cold. I'm sure they could.
Okay.
I know that night at that house, I was laying in the bed and I was just shaking as hard as just shaking. And I'm a hot person. I'm like, I wear shorts and flip flops when it's snowing outside. We have 8 inches of snow and I'm hanging out like, oh, this is fun. I was so cold. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like my body would not stop shaking. And that's when everything started happening. So I'm thinking if they can feel us, if we can feel them, they can feel us.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be the fact that you're more in tune with them as well. And there are other folks out there that are quite in tune with them. Maybe
Mhm.
I wonder if that resonates on them. I wonder if maybe that change in temperature makes them aware that someone like yourself is aware that they're there, where someone me with can carry on in blissful ignorance, that probably would
Mhm.
not affect them. I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm. There's so much
Yeah.
we'll never get answered, which infuriates me. But I always say what we do now, in 100 years may be totally normal. There may be an answer for it. Maybe
Yeah. Do
what
you
we're
think
doing is good research for the future.
Yeah, maybe. Do you think there ever will be an answer? Because this is one of those things. Ghosts, the people like William Shakespeare in the 1600s or whatever wrote about ghosts and things like that. Do you think we ever will get an
Mhm.
explanation? Would you think there ever will be solid proof?
I don't think I don't think it's gonna be scientific enough. Mm. No, I think scientific proof that there's, what a spirit is and things like that. I think there's always going to be you have proof of things that of now and people disagree on have a good answer. I think you're either going to believe or you're not going to believe. I tell people I think you have a paranormal shift where there's times you may not believe. There may be times you believe in something different than what you thought, like, hey, or I saw this, but I don't believe 100% on what you believe in the paranormal. I don't always, if somebody tells me something and I go and I don't have that same feeling, like I said before, it's hard for me to be like, okay, if I'm not there with you experiencing it, it's hard for me to say it happened or didn't
Mm,
happen. So I think there's always this shift on what you believe or don't believe because I believe under stories.
mhm. Yeah, so I guess it's fair to say that you're also a little bit of a skeptic yourself, aren't you?
Mhm. Yeah, I don't believe everything that I mean. I can say I weigh 120 pounds and I don't, but it just so I don't believe that everybody who says that they see things can see something just because there's a lot of fakeness in this. Um, there's a lot of fakeness in this paranormal that we're in, the groups, not, the whole group of paranormal people that you find out that, how do I put it? I'm the type of person I either like you or don't like you. Because I just get that feeling from people. I feel like you're a great person. I would be like, I'm out with you on Friday night. You would come over to my house for dinner. But there's other people that I'm like, no, I don't. I don't get a good feeling from you. And then later on, we find out they have said something that what they do is not true. And that hurts us. That hurts people in the paranormal field. And just because I see something doesn't mean it's 100% that answer. Like, I don't ever want anybody to be like, okay, you saw this, so this is true. No, you find your own stuff. I'm just part of the equipment. And if my K2 meter is not going off and the cording didn't catch it and all this, then you can use me as a piece, but not for everything. Because to me, if I feel something, sense something, hear something, that's part of the investigation. It's not 100% because I can be wrong.
Well, yeah, no, can't we all? Can't we all? That's what's it they say to err is human, to forgive is divine, or whatever the expression is. But so yeah, so in terms of that, like, and you do see it. And funny enough, we had one guy
Hmm.
on who was a
Right.
ghost, yeah, and he was a ghost hunter. And one of the things he said,
Right.
yeah. He had a photograph where this guy had come to him and they were investigating a local airfield, and this chap had this photograph which he was claiming was irrefutable proof. And to look at the photograph, said it was phenomenal. It literally, it was very very convincing. But when they broke it down and they played with it through filters, you could actually see, unfortunately, that this thing had been put on. It had been photoshopped in and been done very very well, and unfortunately, there are people out there. Why do you think it is that people do sort of mess around with this kind of stuff? Is it just purely for attention?
Mhm. For attention, for fame. They want, it gets so frustrating when you see somebody who has took the easy way and faked their stuff, and then they get on a big TV show. I'm okay with not being on a TV show. I would like the money, but I'm okay without being on a TV show. But when you see people who have made it big and that they are fake, and because them, I've talked to several people who've worked on some of the shows and are still on some of the shows, and they just want that fame and fortune, and they're not there to help people or help move forward what we know.
That's a shame, isn't it? That is a shame. Like you say, there's shows that have been on in the UK. Same sort of thing has happened. I forget who it was. We had someone who was telling some stories about Derek Okora, who's a very, very famous medium and psychic in the UK. I don't know if you ever heard of him over there.
What was the show? I'm sorry, we're breaking up. What was the show?
Yeah, the show was called Most Haunted. I think what we're going to have to do, we might have to finish this episode another time, but I think we're going to call it there because we're having massive internet issues here. So we'll end it here, and we'll hopefully get you on very, very near in the future, and we'll sort it out because, like I say, the stream seems to be breaking down.
Yes, I'm so sorry this has happened.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It happens. So, yeah, thank you to anybody.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry. But we will organise this for another time. So, I wish you a fond farewell, and we will assure you we'll get Tabitha on when the internet is a little bit more friendly towards us.